See, I think you already had a class about the anatomy of the retina, isn't it? So, gross anatomy of the retina. It extends from the optic disc up to the ora serrata. Okay, and it's separated into the posterior pole and peripheral retina by the retinal equator. So the retina is separated into the anterior and the posterior retina by an imaginary line. That is the line which connects all the four vortex veins. So vortex vein is a vein which drains the blood supply of the eye. It's a venous drainage. So with respect to diabetic retinopathy, the most important structure which is involved is the posterior pole. What do you mean by the posterior pole? Posterior pole, it includes the optic disc and the macula lutea. So the posterior pole is usually examined either by a 78D lens or a 90D lens, and also by an indirect ophthalmoscopy lens. So able to see, this is the optic disc, this is the superior vasculature and inferior. So the thing is on the medial side, this is the supratemporal retinal artery, this is the retinal vein. This is again an artery, the thicker one is the vein. So the part, the central 30 degrees is what we call this as the posterior pole. And this part which is between the upper vascular arcade and the lower vascular arcade, it is the macula. Okay, so coming to the optic disc is about 1.5 millimeter in diameter. So anything in the retina, suppose there is a lesion or any hemorrhage or anything, if you want to tell the size of the lesion, you should always tell with comparison to the one disc diameter in size or half disc diameter in size. For example, if there is a condition in diabetic retinopathy called as a PDR, proliferative diabetic retinopathy, you will tell what is the amount of vasculature present with respect to more than half this diameter, less than half this diameter, something like that. With that only we are going to estimate whether it is a early PDR or advanced PDR. So we'll come to know about it in the later part of the class. So this is the optic nerve where all the layers terminate and it forms the through the lamina corpus to form the all the ganglion cell layer. The axons of the ganglion cell layer mainly form the optic nerve. Okay, and the central part inside the optic nerve is the optic cup. The cup disc ratio is very important with respect to glaucoma because all the arcuate fibers, superior arcuate fibers drain superiorly, inferior arcuate fibers drain inferiorly, and any changes in the pressure of the eye compress these thin fibers that will cause a cupping, polar notching. Polar means superior pole and inferior pole. Okay, this is the central retinal artery which divides into superotemporal, supronasal, inferotemporal and infratemporal. Accompanying that is the central retinal vein. So with this anatomy, and also you should know what is the macula. This is very, very important with respect to diabetic retinopathy. Okay, so this is about 5.5 millimeter in diameter. Compared to the disc, this is 1.5 millimeter. This is 5.5 millimeter in diameter, and a central part, that is a central part which is about the this size. This is the fovea. Okay, and then it has got the parafovea, which is adjoining the fovea, and perifovea. So this central 1.5 millimeter is very, very important with for us with respect to vision and also diabetic retinopathy. This part of the retina is mostly affected. Why? Because the vasculature is very high in the posterior pole because all the rods, cones, everything is concentrated in the posterior pole. So because there is more vasculature, more capillaries, more vascular changes because of the diabetic retinopathy. Okay. So the central part, this is a small central 0.8 millimeter inside the macula. So central part is called as the foveal avascular zone. This foveal avascular zone is very, very important. If in diabetic retinopathy, if there is an extensive amount of occlusion, this foveal avascular zone will increase in size. In that case, there will be extensive ischemia. So with whatever treatment you give to the macular edema, the patient will not improve. So you should know what is a macula, what is a fovea, parafovea, perifovea, and the foveal avascular zone. Foveal avascular zone is very, very important with respect to macular edema which occurs in diabetic retinopathy. So I think all of you are aware of these layers of retina. What is happening? So just we'll revise the layers of the retina. So we have got the retinal pigment epithelium, then the layers of rods and cones, external limiting membrane, outer nuclear, outer plexiform, inner nuclear, inner plexiform, ganglion cell layer, nerve fiber layer, and internal limiting membrane. So this is the microscopic appearance. Why is this happening again? So this is the retinal pigment epithelium, layer of rods and cones, outer nuclear, outer plexiform, inner nuclear, inner plexiform, and then ganglion cell layer and nerve fiber. So what is diabetic retinopathy? So there is a very famous ophthalmologist, Jules Kildare, who has written about 18 volumes of books for ophthalmology. He's 100 years back itself, he predicted that diabetic retinopathy is a major ocular tragedy, which is predictable but not preventable, relatively untreatable. This is very, very true. It is relatively untreatable, which is chronic and progressive if not treated, and cause blindness in a significant number of cases. So, what is the load of diabetes in India? In the year 2000, the population of diabetic people in India is around like 35 million, and estimated to go up to 75 million in 2030. So, uh, any questions in between, you can interrupt me and ask now. So, approximately 5.6 million persons are there with diabetic retinopathy. Both type 1 and type 2 people are more prone for diabetic retinopathy. Of this, type 1 is very, very uh, prone rather than type 2. Also, the duration of retinopathy is very, very important. After 20 years of diabetic retinopathy, almost all persons with type 1 and approximately 60% of persons with type 2 diabetes will develop a retinopathy. So, the first thing you ask if you examine a patient, எவ்வளோ நாளா உங்களுக்கு diabetes இருக்கு. So, if it's a type 1, more than 20 years, all of them definitely will have some form of retinopathy. அதே மாதிரி type 2, approximately 60% of the people will have a retinopathy. The importance of identifying and treating diabetic retinopathy in early stages is very, very important, because once it's advanced to the proliferative stage, the treatment is very, very difficult. So out of these people, 30% of them require treatment and 3% of them can be blind because of diabetic retinopathy. So all the pathology will occur in the retinal capillaries. So you should know the structure of the retinal capillaries. So the retinal capillaries are non-fenestrated. So you know that there are two blood barriers in retina. One is the outer barrier and inner barrier. The outer barrier is formed by, any answer? Outer blood retinal barrier is formed by Gurushat.
Yes,
Can
ma'am.
you hear me? What is the outer
Ma'am,
blood
your
retinal barrier formed?
ma'am, pigment epithelium.
Very good. The retinal pigment epithelium, the zona occludens of the retinal pigment epithelium forms the outer blood retinal barrier. And the inner barrier is formed by
Ma'am, endothelium.
inner barrier. Yes, the non-fenestrated capillaries, endothelial cells of the capillaries. That is very, very important. It is non-fenestrated, so it forms the inner blood retinal barrier. Why is these non-fenestrated cells have got tight junctions, which will not generally leak unless there is a microangiopathy. Okay. So what is the pathogenesis? So main pathogenesis is microangiopathy. So what is microangiopathy? So this is the retinal arteriole, this is the capillary plexus, and this is the venule. So this part, that is the precapillary arterioles. This is the capillaries, precapillary arterioles, capillaries, and postcapillary venules. This is affected in diabetic retinopathy. So what happens? So there will be structural changes and functional changes and rheological. Structural means there will be changes in the structure of the retinal capillary endothelial cells. Rheological is the blood consistency and the viscosity, adhesions, everything increases. So that is the rheological changes. So what happens in diabetic retinopathy is there will be thickening of the basement membrane. So the basement membrane thickens and the endothelial cell will be damaged. Because of this, the there will be changes inside the rheological changes, like the RBC will change in shape, the platelet will increase in stickiness. All this will form a microangiopathy. And also because of the loss of the pericytes. So the pericytes are present in the outer layer. If the pericytes are lost, the integrity of the vessel wall goes. So what happens? The vessel slightly bulges out. So that will form what is called as a microaneurysm. So this is the first pathology. Next is the microvascular occlusion. So what are the reasons? So one is the microangiopathy and microvascular occlusion. So I'll deal that in. So what are the reasons for all these changes occurring in a diabetic retinopathy? The first and foremost reason is the persistent hyperglycemia, or otherwise uncontrolled diabetes. So what happens because of persistent hyperglycemia? There happens, as I told, structural, biochemical, and hemodynamical. What is the biochemical changes? There will be accumulation of the advanced glycation end products. So advanced glycation end products, that will lead to two things. One is the microvascular occlusion, another thing is the microvascular leakage. So this is the pathology, as I told you, occurs in this part, that is the precapillary arterioles, capillaries and postcapillary venules. So what happens because of the microvascular leakage, because of the loss of pericytes, the loss of the endothelial integrity? So what happens? So the blood retinal barrier, that is the inner blood retinal barrier, is lost. So what happens? It increases the permeability of the vessel wall and it ultimately leaks. This leak is what we see clinically as macular edema. So this is the macular edema. They will accumulate as hard exudates. The fluid part will get absorbed back and the proteins will deposit in the retinal layers as hard exudate. There is one more thing called a soft exudate that will be fluffy. The hard exudate will be discrete, and that is accumulating in the nerve fiber layer, and the soft exudate is mainly because of the ischemia, whereas hard exudate is mainly because of the leakage. So this is the question which they commonly ask you in the exam. How will you differentiate between a hard exudate and soft exudate? Okay. Next, what happens? So already I told you the capillaries are very weak. So because of the loss of pericytes, they outpoach. So that outpoach is called as the microaneurysm. Again, the integrity of that is not good. So it ultimately leaks. So what we see is the hemorrhages, exudates and edema. So these are the changes occurring in the posterior pole or the macula and other places because of the microvascular occlusion and microvascular leakage. So because of the extensive ischemia which also develops, there will be loss of blood supply to a particular area. Because of that, what happens? New vessel will start to appear. So these are called between between the artery and the vein. Again, these aviations are not okay. And again, what happens because of the ischemia? There is increased expression of what is known as the VGEF, otherwise vascular endothelial growth factor. So this vascular endothelial growth factor promotes the formation of new vessel. So this new vessel will structurally weak. There won't be any pericytes. There won't be a proper basement membrane. Again, they will leak. So where all the new vessels can appear? It can appear on the disc or it can appear elsewhere. If the new vessel appear on the disc, it is called as NVD, new vessels on the disc. If the new vessels appear on the other places, it is called NVE, new vessels elsewhere. Okay. So with this, we'll see how we manage. So the first and foremost management is the screening and early diagnosis. Apart from that, the patient should always have a system glycemic control. As I already told you, persistent hyperglycemia is the main cause of diabetic retinopathy. So the person should have a good glycemic control of HbA1c of less than 7. So there are various studies with respect to diabetic retinopathy. So the two studies which dealt with the risk factors is the DCCT, that is Diabetes Control and Complication Trial, and UK-PDS study. So these studies proved that the control of associated risk factors like systemic hypertension, dyslipidemia, nephropathy, metabolic syndrome, these risk factors are controlled, then the progression of diabetic retinopathy is halted. So how often you should examine the patient? So first examination, if the patient age is less than 30 years, should be within 5 years of diagnosis. Suppose if the patient is diagnosed at the age of 20 years, within 25 years he should have his first fundus examination. Suppose if the patient is diagnosed with 10 years diabetes, by 15 years you should have his first fundus examination. And after that every year, okay. Suppose if patient's age is above 30, upon diagnosis itself we should have a fundus examination, and then annually. Suppose if the pregnancy, in diabetic patient pregnant before conception, and every trimester she has to get examined. So what are the management guidelines? So the management guidelines are based only on 3 studies. What are the studies? ETDRS, DRS and DRVS. ETDRS is Early Treatment Diabetic Retinopathy Study. DRS Diabetic Retinopathy Study. DRVS is Diabetic Retinopathy Vitrectomy Study. Okay, just remember the name ETDRS study you should definitely know, because this ETDRS study only classified diabetic retinopathy into non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy and proliferative. Non-proliferative is again classified into mild, moderate, severe and very severe. Again proliferative is the advanced stage of diabetic retinopathy. Again it is again classified into early proliferative diabetic retinopathy and high risk proliferative diabetic retinopathy and advanced PDR. And again there is one more entity called as a diabetic macular edema. It is clinical CSME. We call it CSME. It is clinically significant macular edema. So this diabetic macular edema can occur even in non-proliferative and in proliferative. So when you are going to diagnose a case, it will be either a NPDR. NPDR is non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy. NPDR with the CSME or without CSME. Or PDR, proliferative diabetic retinopathy, with the CSME or without CSME. So that's how we classify. So if it's a case of an NPDR, non-proliferative, it is easily manageable. So this is the fundus. So you can see a few aneurysms, few dot and dot hemorrhage. This is called as a mild. See this picture. So what is this? Anybody can tell? What is this? What I'm pointing out? What is this? Harish? Anyone? What is this, ma? See the fundus. Somebody can answer. Anyone? Aditya? Irkana? கேக்குதா இல்லையாப்பா நான் கேக்குற கேள்வி? சிவா?
Yes, ma'am.
யாரு? Who is answering? Whose voice was that?
Aditya, ma'am.
Aditya, what is this, Aditya? Can you describe this? It's a exudate, right? Hello, கேக்குதா? ஆதித்யா கேக்குதா?
Ma'am, exudate, hard exudates.
Why do you say it's hard exudate? See, it is discrete, right? Hello. Somebody please answer, means I'll understand that you are all listening, or else I feel that you are all sleeping. Already I'm seeing the computer and taking the class with no interest. Huh? Only if you people like answer one or two questions, I'll be happy to take the class, right? Huh? Siva? Siva Vignesh, எங்க இருக்க?
Ma'am,
What is this I'm asking? The one I'm pointing out, the yellow colored things. So these are the hard exudates, okay? And these are the small, small red spots which you see are the dot and blot hemorrhages. Okay, and these small, small protrusions from the thing, you can able to see, right? These are the microaneurysms. See here, தெரியுதா enlarged காட்டுறேன். Are you able to see? See, this is the dot and pinhead shaped lesions. Able to see? This is the microaneurysm. Okay. Can you able to see now in enlarged picture? So this is the hard exudate, discrete, creamy, okay, and this is the dot and blot hemorrhages. So this is what we call this as the macular edema, okay. So again, so this is what you saw previously was mild and moderate. So then comes what is known as a severe and very severe NPDR. So what is severe NPDR? See, so this is the retinal vein, okay, and this is the retinal artery. Artery will be always thin and vein will be, in a diabetic retinopathy, the vein will be dilated. So this is what we call this as beading. Can you able to see this is the beading of the veins? See, this is how the vein is. In diabetic retinopathy, the vein will be dilated, tortuous, and what you see here is the beading of the veins. And these are the small dot and dot hemorrhages. And something you see a fuzzy vessels here, right? So these vessels are flat, they are not elevated. So they run between an artery and between the artery and the vein. So this is called as the IRMA. It is otherwise called as so this is the venous looping which occurs in the diabetic retinopathy. If all these changes are present, it is called as a severe diabetic retinopathy, severe NPDR. If any, so if there is extensive hemorrhages in all quadrants, venous bleeding and looping and IRMA. So these three are the criteria to tell if it is a severe NPDR or not. If only one is present, it is severe. If two, like a venous bleeding and an IRMA, it is present, it is called as a very severe diabetic retinopathy. So how are you going to treat them? So for them, we have to do what is called as a pan-retinal photocoagulation. Okay, just know that that is enough. So before proceeding to treatment at non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy, we should do what is known as a fundus fluorescent angiography. So fundus fluorescent angiography is a way in which we inject fluorescent dye into the veins, and then we see the circulation of the dye, and we assess the perfusion and also treats for any vascular leakage and also for any non-perfusion, otherwise for ischemia. So we can see. So as I already told you, this is the fovea and perifovea and parapovea. So this see here, only 0.08 is the size, but see here, there is absolutely no vessels here. So this is called as the enlargement of the FA, the foveal avascular zone. So this
Goodbye.
was telling you, so we do what is known as a fundus fluorescent angiogram to see what are the exact vascular changes occurring in the retina. So what we do is we inject a dye and we see for the circulation of the dye in the eye, similar to something what we do for the heart angiogram. So this is a fundus fluorescent angiogram. So we inject a dye and see for circulation. This is the retinal artery. This is the vein. You can nicely see the venous tortuosity dilatation. And you can see an area where there are absolutely no capillaries. This is called as an area of capillary non-perfusion or capillary dropouts. So in these cases, even whatever treatment you give, the patient will not improve his vision because of the everything will be gone in this place. There will be no rods, no cones, no vessels, nothing. And see, you can see the dot on dot hemorrhages. You can nicely see the microaneurysm. So you can see the microaneurysms are like pinhead sizes bulb-like lesion. So these are the microvascular microaneurysms. And see, this is a fuzzy like vessels you can see. See this connecting a vein and an artery. Able to see this part. So this is what we call as the IRMA, intraretinal microvascular anomaly. This is the IRMA. So all these things suggest that it's a case of a very severe NPDR. So why we should do an fundus fluorescent angiogram or FFA is should assess the whether there is what are the amount of capillary non-perfusion, which relates to the severity of the disease. And also we can easily identify between an IRMA and a NUSL, and also we can see what is the type of macular edema. So these dark spots are the where there are no capillaries. So this is the extensive ischemic retina. So again, a macular edema, there are three types. One is the focal leak, where the microaneurysm will leak. A diffuse leak is where all the capillaries will be dilated and it will leak. The third type is a ischemic, which I showed you before. So here you can see nicely the microaneurysms which are getting highlighted in the early stage, and it leaks. Leaks means it increases, the fluorescence around the microaneurysm increases. That is, the vessel becomes weak and leaks everything. So this is called as a diffuse leak. So this is a diffuse type of macular edema. So what is CSME? Clinically significant macular edema. So you can nicely you can see this is the posterior pole, this is the macula, and you can see the hemorrhages and exudates. So these are the hard exudates. So if there is a retinal edema or hard exudates within 500 microns from the center of the fovea. So 500 microns, how will you tell this? 1500 microns is the size of the disc. So 1/3 of it. This is the center of the fovea. If it is within 500 microns from the center of the macula, it is called as a clinically significant macular edema or hard exudates. You can see the hard exudates again within 500 microns. Also, retinal edema of 1 disc diameter or larger. Any part of it is within 1 disc diameter from the center of the fovea. All these things you need not know. Just see to that there is an entity called as a clinically significant macular edema. So this is how we confirm your macular edema is again you do what is called as a optical coherence tomography. So this is a normal fundus, a normal fluorescent angiogram, and a normal optical coherence tomogram. You can see all the layers of the retina here. So this is the RPE layer of rods and cones. This is the outer nuclear, outer plexiform, inner nuclear, inner plexiform, ganglion cell layer, the nerve fiber layer. So this is the cross section of the nerve retinal layers. So when you do an FFA for a macular edema, what are the things you can see? So here you can see the microaneurysms which are leaking. So this is called as a, see how it is leaking. So this is the focal leak, only the microaneurysm is leaking. Here there is a diffuse, all the capillaries are dilated and leaking. So this is called as a diffuse leak. Again another leak. So again at macular edema, you can see the white marks here. Here white marks. Can you see white marks close to the exudate? So this is the laser marks. So this is before treatment. and see after treatment. Oh, shit. My goodness. So this is the laser which we give. That is the grid laser. You can see the white laser marks here. So we generally give the laser here. These are the lasers which we give to treat the edema. So we just tickle the RPE by giving a grid laser, and we help the RPE to absorb the excess fluid accumulated in the macula. Okay. So this is called as a grid laser. So these all you need not know. This is the various OCT presentations. So the normal retinal layers you already seen. See the amount of cystoid spaces. So this is called as a cystoid type of edema or spongiform. This is a cystoid. Okay. So this is another type of macular edema where there's a traction which causes the macular edema. So what we generally do for this macular edema is, see the amount of exudates. You can see this is the OCT picture, the picture on the down. See the picture below shows the OCT picture of the retina. See here you can able to see the white dots, hyperreflective dots are the exudates, and this dark place is the accumulation of the fluid. So another OCT picture of this retina which shows a macular edema with exudates. After we give what is called as the anti-VEGF or anti-vascular endothelial growth factors or steroids, intravitreal triamcinolone, and see how the retina has responded. The edema has subsided. So this is the OCT before. So another OCT where you can see the traction. That is the vitreous which is attached to the optic disc is pulling the retina and is causing again an edema. So when the exudates are more towards the center which we saw, the main treatment is the anti-VEGF. So what are the drugs which we use is the bevacizumab and ranibizumab. So these are the drugs which we commonly use. We use intravitreally these drugs, at least 3 to 5 injections to treat the macular edema. Or else you can use intravitreal steroids like intravitreal triamcinolone or intravitreal dexamethasone. So the trade name for the intravitreal dexamethasone is Orsudex. So you have to monitor the mission and you have to repeat the injection periodically on PRN basis. So you can nicely see a grid laser given. So these white patches are immediately after the grid laser. So for the macular edema, which is not involving the center, if it's involving the center, we give an intravitreal anti-VEGF. If it's like more peripherally, it is involving the macula, we do what is called as a grid laser. And the laser which we generally use is a frequency doubled Nd:YAG laser with a wavelength of 532. It's a green laser. Okay. So again a focal laser given to a focal leak. You can see the microaneurysms which are lasered. So you can see the white marks here. This is the exudate. This is the microaneurysms to which we have given the laser. This is a focal laser. Again in ischemic maculopathy, so nothing can be done for this, no active treatment. There is actually no blood vessels at all. Everything is occluded and obliterated. So for this only observation, and you have to give a pan-retinal photocoagulation because this much amount of ischemia, there will be extensive formation of new vessel because of increased secretion of anti-VEGF. Again for whatever injections or treatment you give, sometimes the macular edema will remain persistently with them. So for recalcitrant macular edema, we use steroids, that is intravitreal triamcinolone or intravitreal dexamethasone. Intravitreal dexamethasone is an implant which can stay in the eye up to 6 months and release the drug gradually. So these two can be given for mainly a pseudo. So this is how we give an intravitreal injection through the pars plana route, 3.5 millimeter from the limbus. We inject the drug into the vitreous cavity. Okay. This is a video. I don't think you can see the video. So this is a pre and post treatment, pre IVTA and post IVTA. You can see how much the edema has decreased. So coming to the last part of the topic, that is the proliferative. So that is, these are all non-proliferative. Whatever you saw, mild, moderate, severe, very severe, are all non-proliferative. So when there is, so the last picture which you saw, there was extensive ischemia. So if there is such amount of ischemia, there will be increased expression of what is known as the VEGF, vascular endothelial growth factor. So that will cause a proliferation of new vessels. That is, it can occur on the disc. If it occur on the disc, it is NVD, or elsewhere means NVE. Okay. So what you do? So again, how do you classify a PDR? PDR is proliferative diabetic retinopathy. So it is classified as an early PDR or a high risk PDR. So what is an early PDR? So early PDR is the new vessels on the disc or elsewhere. If it's a disc, it is less than 1/3 the disc diameter, or elsewhere is less than half this diameter. If this is the case, it is called as an early PDR. What's the high risk PDR? See the amount of new vessels here, it is very, very extensive over the disc. It is more than 1/3 the disc diameter. Also here, it is more than half the disc diameter. So when it is this case, it is called as a high risk. Why? What do you mean by high risk? Is immediately you have to start the treatment. What is the treatment? It is PRP, or pan-retinal photocoagulation. So because if you don't treat this case, he will bleed intensively, and he will go for what is called as a vitreous hemorrhage. The whole vitreous cavity will be filled with hemorrhage, and he will lose his vision. Okay, so that is the importance of diagnosing it early PDR, high risk PDR. Any PDR, immediately the next moment you have to you have to give PRP, pan retinal photocoagulation. Again, the same laser, that is the frequency doubled Nd:YAG laser or argon green laser. Argon green laser, the wavelength is 514, and frequency doubled Nd:YAG is 532. You can see here, when you don't treat, this is what happens. See, the vessel has bled. So you can see the media is very, very hazy. You can't see the fundus clearly here. So this is the vitreous hemorrhage. And see here, the extensive new vessel. Able to appreciate the extensive new vessel? So if you don't treat it at this stage, you will go for this. You will bleed, the media will become opaque and will be hazy, and you won't be able to see clearly. And again, there are a lot of complications of that. So how you see a new vessel in FFA? You can see at the early stage itself, you can see how much amount of new vessels are there. See, this is the NVD, more than 1 disc diameter. And see the NVE, how much new vessel, more than 1 disc diameter. So this is a case of early PDR or high risk PDR. This is a case of what? Early PDR or high risk PDR? Anyone? Anyone can answer this question?
High risk PDR, ma'am.
Yes, very good.
High risk.
Why are you high risk? Why do you say it's high risk? Because the new vessels are more than 1/3 the disc diameter on the disc, NVD, and NV is more than half this diameter. So this is a high risk PDR. So you have to give him, what is the treatment you have to give him? What treatment you should offer him immediately? Anyone?
Pan retinal photocoagulation.
Very good. Pan retinal photocoagulation. Who was that? Whose voice was that? I want to know the names.
Abhinav.
Abhinav. Very good. Very good.
Double frequency Nd:YAG laser, ma'am.
Frequency double Nd:YAG laser. What's the wavelength? Anyone? What's your name, ma? Who just answered?
Alka, ma'am.
Alka. Okay. Where is Afra? Afra is there? Afra is there, no? One girl. She's there in the class? What's the frequency of argon green laser and Nd:YAG laser?
Nd:YAG 532 and argon green 514.
Very good. Frequency doubled is 532. Normal Nd:YAG laser is 1064. Okay, that is used for what? That laser is used for what? In 1064 wavelength. Commonly,
Posterior capsulotomy.
very good. It is used to treat the posterior capsular opacification. So you do a posterior YAG capsulotomy using a ND-YAG laser. Very good. So this is the early stage of the fundus fluorescent angiogram where you can see the new vessels, and this will extensively leak in the late stage. So this is amount of leak which occur in a new vessel. And also see how much new vessels are there. Which these findings cannot be seen clearly on fundus examination. For this purpose, if you do an FFA fluorescent angiogram, you can clearly see the circulation, you can clearly see the microaneurysms, the new vessel, all the leakage, everything. Another fundus picture. Same thing. See the new vessels, extensive new vessels on the disc. See how much amount of new vessels are there. So this is pan-retinal photocoagulation. Okay. So this is how we do the pan-retinal photocoagulation. So we have to start from the disc, from the posterior port. We have to go up to the equator. Just give in rows. So what is the spot size generally we give is around 200 microns. Okay, and the number of burns is approximately 1500 to 3000 burns we generally give. So more than that you need not know anything. So what is the burn we should get is a moderate intensity burn. So this is otherwise called as a grade 3 burn. Okay, and this burn should be one burn with very close. You have to take one burn with a part, and outside the arcades you have to start and go up to the equator. You should not come here. Okay, whatever laser you give inside the posterior pole will be a very mild laser, the laser. There the spot size and the energy will be very less because we should not damage anything in the posterior pole. So here why you are giving so much of laser is you burn that retina. You make the hypoxic retina as anoxic. If it's hypoxic only, it will need more oxygen and will produce more new vessel and more bleeding. If you damage and if you make it anoxic, then it will not need any oxygen. So all the blood from the posterior mid periphery will be diverted to the posterior pole, and the most important structures are present in the posterior pole. So that will be useful for the patient. So that is the reason for giving a pan-retinal photocoagulation. You make the hypoxic retina anoxic. You burn it, just burn it, and you shift the blood supply and oxygen supply from the mid periphery to the posterior pole. Okay. So this is. This is what I told you. These are the various lasers which we give. Argon green, frequency double NDR, and other lasers are also diode and krypton red. Just know the frequencies. That's all you don't need. So this is how the laser spot will give, and we just burn the retina like this. This is the 90D, how we see the retina and give the laser. So this is the fresh PRP marks. Only fresh PRP marks will be like this. After like 2 or 3 weeks, it will become pigmented. Okay, so these are the fresh PRP marks. So what I already told you is the grade 3 burn is what we need. It is the dirty white or opaque grade. You should not give a heavy burn, should not be given. If you give a heavy burn, it will go up to the choroid, and you can get a new vessels from the choroid. That is called as a subretinal choroidal neovascularization. That will cause a lot of problem. So you should give a grade 3 burn. So again, after giving the laser, you have to periodically follow up the patient to see whether all the new vessels have regressed or any new vessels has come. If such is the case, you have to again give what is called a fill-in laser. So you give the laser to whatever area is seen. If there is still new vessels, the patient should not have any active activity inside the eye. You should not have any exudate. You should not have any hemorrhage. There should not be any new vessel till such time you laser the patient. Okay. So active new vessel is indicated by tight network with little fibrous tissue. So this is the reason. Because the vessels lack a fibrous tissue, it bleed again and again and again. Okay. So this is the fresh PRP marks. and in between you can see the fill in PRP marks. So another there is instead of giving single burn, there is one more called as a pattern laser, where if there are various patterns, the circular pattern, triangular pattern, semicircular pattern, square pattern. So in this, if you press one time, you can get so many burns. So this is 56 spots. You can give in approximately 0.6 seconds. This is the advanced technology. This is called a Pascal laser. So there are various complications of laser. The most common complication is restriction of field of vision, because your mid periphery you are burning the retina. So you will have a restriction of field of vision. So what is the final part in the course of diabetic retinopathy? So one is a non-proliferative. From there he goes to proliferative, and again is the end stage disease. That is the advanced diabetic eye disease, where the treatment is very, very, very difficult. See, these are the various forms of the advanced diabetic retinopathy. So you can see the vitreous hemorrhage here, the subretinal hemorrhage. Subretinal hemorrhage is dark, it will be boat shaped, and see the tractional retinal detachment. All because of the vitreous hemorrhage which occurs, which is not treated properly. So you can see a traction retinal detachment involving the macula. So these are all the various complications. All these requires only a surgical treatment, vitrectomy. Okay. See how the retina is from that stage, it goes to this stage. This is called a tractional retinal detachment. See here the new vessel, because of the bleeding, healing, bleeding, healing. See the posterior, you cannot see anything, only the new vessels, the fibrous membrane, the traction, everything. So this stage occurs. So even though if you do a surgery, the patient's vision will not be gained to the fullest. So what we do in these cases, this is advanced diabetic eye disease. What are the conditions? Non-resolving vitreous hemorrhage. This is a non-resolving vitreous hemorrhage. So TRD, that is tractional retinal detachment involving the macula, and then combined regmatogenous detachment and traction detachment. So this is the premacular, subretinal or premacular. Two types are there. Premacular hemorrhage, which obscures the view of the posterior pole, and then in case of a macular edema with traction. So all these conditions we have to do what is known as a vitrectomy. So in vitrectomy, what you do is you remove all the opacities, you release all the tractions, and you ablate the retina with endolaser. Instead of giving a photocoagulation through a slit lamp delivery, we directly go inside the eye through the probe and give the laser directly to the retina. That is called as an endolaser. And also you maintain the integrity of the retina by using a retinal tamponade. We inject either gas or silicone oil to make the retina flat and attach it. So these are the procedures. You need not need this. These are all videos. You don't need this. So again is the anti-VEGF, as I already told you. For macular edema involving the center, we use what is called as the anti-VEGF. One is the bevacizumab, another thing is the ranibizumab. So there are various protocols. So suppose if a patient, you are examining the diabetic patient, diabetic retinopathy, you are identifying some condition. So how frequently you call the patient for follow-up? So one is, there is no retinopathy, you can come every year. There is only mild, that is few microaneurysms, you ask him to come every 9 months. Suppose the patient has got few hemorrhages, few exudates, then you have to see him every 6 months. Again, if this patient is severe NPDR, so what are the features of severe NPDR? Anybody can tell? What are the features of severe NPDR? Anyone? Inacha? Anyone?
Cotton wool spots.
Severe NPDR main changes என்னமா cotton wool spots கிடையாது. அதுவும் one
Venous,
of the changes. Correct.
venous bleeding,
Yes.
microaneurysm,
Microaneurysm is
Irma.
mild NPDR. Irma, correct.
Irma,
Hemorrhages in all quadrants, venous bleeding and looping in 2 quadrants, and then Irma in 1 quadrant. This is the criteria for severe NPDR. If any 2 is present, it is very severe NPDR. If any one of the following finding is present, it is severe NPDR. So the patient has extensive hemorrhages in all quadrants, venous bleeding and looping in 2 quadrants, and Irma. What is Irma?
infrared
between a new vessel and IRMA is IRMA will not breach the ILM, internal limiting membrane. New vessel will have already breached the internal limiting membrane. If it breaches the internal limiting membrane, it is very prone to bleed. Very good. So, what are the reasons for a visual loss? So, as we already seen everything, so macular edema, hemorrhages, vitreous hemorrhage, retinal detachment. So, what is the take-home message you should know about diabetic retinopathy is? First is avoid, prevent. You should have, the patient should have a good glycemic control. And all the associated risk factors should be controlled, like a hypertension, hyperlipidemia, nephropathy. One more important thing is, whenever you see a patient with diabetic retinopathy, like severe, very severe PDR, you should always have in your mind the same vascular changes will occur in the kidneys. That is, he will definitely have nephropathy. Okay. So, when we refer to a nephrologist, they will immediately identify, they will check for urine microalbuminuria and they will identify nephropathy. So, in early stage itself, you have to refer them, cross-reference is very, very important. Similarly, nephrologists also refer to us seeing a nephropathy. They will refer to us to rule out retinopathy. So, this nephropathy and retinopathy will go hand in hand. If he has a retinopathy, he will have a nephropathy. If he has a nephropathy, he will have a retinopathy. So, when it reaches this stage, it is end organ failure. So, the patient, you should not allow the patient to reach this stage. You have to advise him to control, good glycemic control, control all the risk factors. So, if you do if he does this, he will delay the onset of retinopathy. Some people will never get also. And even if he has retinopathy, it won't progress. It can stay in the mild moderate stage. It will not go to severe, very severe. And ultimately, what is our aim is to prevent blindness. Okay, when it reaches advanced stage, as I already seen, it is very, very difficult. Even if you do whatever surgery you do, it is very difficult. Okay, thank you. Any doubt, anyone you can ask.